Hey everyone, I'm just going to take the time now to quickly run through some of the processes that I went through when I was producing this track. Um, so I jumped into a new Ableton session. I really like to write and arrange in the session view now after using Ableton for a little bit this trimester. It's just really great to get ideas in quick. So I started in the session view, and for this particular project, I just had a little drum beat in my mind. I'm not usually always starting with drums, but this time I just had it in my mind, so I was gonna just flow with it that way. So I just grabbed a quick kit from the Ableton library, dropped it on a MIDI track, and this is what I had in my mind. I just finger drummed it and then quantized it, but this is what it sounds like at the start. So just really simple. So yeah, that's what I started with. And from there, so I quickly got that down, and from there I went straight to some keys because I wanted to go to a chord progression then. So I looked at some synth patches, some synth presets. In the end, I found this Rhodes sounding one called Crep Slide. Yeah, this is what it sounded like. Give me 2 seconds. So it sounded like that, and some of the chords I was really liking for this track were something like that. So yeah, I did tweak it a lot from the preset, and in my final mix I ended up taking all these weird EQs and saturations away so I could do that all myself. But in the end, the part that I played into the track at the very start just sounded like this. So that's the loop I had. I had that in my drums to start off. And from there, I just wanted to really build around that chord progression. So I went directly just to a grand piano just to thicken things up. I didn't actually even record a clip. I just knew I needed to have it in my arrangement. But I just ended up making a really hard piano, sort of power piano sound from just the grand piano preset in Ableton. That yeah, was just going to help thicken up my my chords from that first synth, which was going to be my like rhythm synth. Yeah, from there I just kept going with the synths. I found this one that worked really well for some stabs in the end. Again, just going from presets because it was really early on. Sorry, that's the wrong one. This one here. Really yeah, basic sort of stab sound. A couple octaves above, like that. With yeah, its delays and everything patched into that preset, which I just changed to how I like it to start the track off. Yeah, from there I just moved into some like swells, some swell synths, so like that. Yeah, and then when this came a little bit later, but we'll just keep going while we're on the synths. Yeah, I went over to this lead sound pretty quickly, knowing that I was gonna want to insert some sort of lead synth in there. So that's the sound I went with. Some of these little loops that I had at the start sounded like this for this. Oopsie. So you had that along with that drum loop at the very start. And yeah, the track was starting to take a bit of shape. So once I had all these synth parts, it was still sounding super thin, obviously. So I moved just straight to bass. That's what I always go to when I want to thicken things up really quickly. So I actually started with this not acoustic bass. I just recorded me playing bass guitar to start off. Pretty simple bass line just to get it down. But yeah, this is what I just played into the track. this session here is the first version of my my production session, first version of this track. So I've obviously gone a long way in the creation process. So this track right here started as a loop in session view, but I've since just click and dragged it straight onto my arrangement. But that's what we started with for the bass. And yeah, I just felt that it was kind of thickening things up, but it actually just needed a bit of grunt, a bit more power to it. So in the end, I landed on a synth bass preset, which sounded like this in the end. So we get that paired with this. And yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, then we had a pretty thick, nice sounding, decent sounding arrangement, a little bit better. I'll just quickly show you what I had and where I was at. So sounding a bit better, a bit thicker. So from there, I'm a guitar player, so I instantly looked to what guitar parts can I add. So I actually started out with just this really simple one over here. This also started as a clip in session view, but I've since dragged it out. But yeah, this is what I started, the first guitar part I thought of and brought into it this session. Hang on, let me just mute everything else for you. So just heaps chorus, plenty of delay, relatively just following the similar chord progression. So I started out with that one. Then I added this one here. The pop is my dying UR12 interface, unfortunately. I quickly retracked that for the moving into the mixing stage. But yeah, then I added just a final guitar part, which sounded like this. So together we just had those guitar parts, which were sounding like that and this. So yeah, that was what went into the setup of this session. After that, I was pretty happy with how it was sounding. So after that, I had everything put together. And if I can use my keyboard properly, we had this right here. Let me just stop these clips. Sorry, it's all correctly arranged in my arrangement view now. My apologies. So I forgot, after I had my guitars, then I was pretty happy with how the whole thing was sounding. So I brought it all into arrangement view and started looking at my arrangement for it. And with that, I then stemmed this clip out of the drums that I started with out into my layers, and I got a bit more pedantic about how I really wanted my kick to sound, snare to sound, etc. So basically, for the drums, my kick and snare is just layers of various different samples. So on my kick, I ended up with these two samples here. Well, that's because I've got that soloed. My apologies. Solo my drum bus. Here we go. So I had this 808 kick and also this acoustic kick, and then they came together to sound like this. So yeah, that was my kick. Snare was similar, except I went with 3 samples for the snare. So I had this one, and this one. And they came together to sound like this. So yeah, nice and roomy. So the kick and snare pattern ended up sounding like this. I decided also pretty early on that I wanted to have a reverb snare. So I just added a duplicate of that track and actually just took out one of the snares in my duplicate track because I found that this sample here, this sample here had just a little bit too much tail on it and it was reacting to my reverb a little bit differently. So I just ripped that out of the duplicate track and moved on. The hi-hat, it wasn't really important to me to layer samples for the hi-hat. I was going to layer it with another element of percussion later down here. So I just quickly added in a hi-hat sample that was from my original loop. So my hi-hat just sounds pretty basic. So then I had the loop a little bit expanded, a little more in depth. Next thing I looked at for percussion was this clave sample. I just felt I needed a little bit of, I don't know, I just was experimenting and it added something and I kind of liked it. So that is just this is the dry signal and then I just quickly added some reverb to it. Get it away from my hi-hat a little bit more. Then I just added some congas on the end of each 8 bars, which just adds a little bit of variety to my percussion, a little bit more, a little bit different frequencies to what is generally being heard from my percussion. So I just added this little ending phrase to each 8 bars. So and then I just quickly looked at some sort of emphasis effects of some reverse cymbals, things like that, just to make the pattern, make the arrangement a little more interesting throughout. So I added just a white noise riser and a cymbal. To bring us into the main track and then, emphasize the chorus a bit later on. So that's what we had that far. And then the next step from there was to add vocals to it. So like I said in the catch up in week 5, I was going to be recording vocals. So I got my vocalist in and I reflect a little bit more on how we tracked them and the recording process in my learning journal. But essentially I just tracked my lead vocal with a 58 and a C414. It was my first time using a C414, so I just wanted to put a 58 there just to have a reference. And if I really didn't like the 414, I could just quickly change to something I know works. The 58 ended up being quite redundant, as you can imagine. The 414 sounded brilliant, but it also was really nice to blend the two, I found, in the mixing stage. So my lead vocal in the chorus sounds a little bit like this.
Danger.
Let's take these effects off.
I'm not loving this behavior.
Maybe in the mix is a bit better. This session is still in a bit of a pre-mix phase, so it's not the most balanced, best mix ever. I just did a pretty basic level mix pre-vocals, so that's why the vocals sound a little bit well out of whack compared to everything else. But that's what my lead sounded like. We recorded a whole bunch of harmony layers, so things like these. A little bit messy, but they just add a little bit more depth, a little bit more interest.
Danger, danger, danger.
So that was the vocal recording, and that is pretty much it for the production aspect of this. From here, I basically just created a new version of this session, brought everything to audio, so converted all these MIDI tracks to audio. I called it my session transport version, and then exported all those as WAV files and basically went to a whole new folder for mixing. And yeah, that'll be in the next video, how I mix this beast. Awesome. Thanks for watching.